Welcome to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast, where we talk about homesteading stuff and life stuff and everything in between. Join me, Amy Dingman, as we explore big questions on a little farm. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast, where we talk about life and how to live a good one. Today is January 21st, 2025. This is episode 304. Today, we are going to talk about something that I think all of us come up against at some point, whether it's on the homestead or in our relationships or even just day-to-day stuff. And that is the fact that people learn and excel in very, very different ways. I have mentioned before that my husband is very mechanical. He has a lot of spatial smarts. And that is not me. That is not how my brain works. My strengths lie in words and communication and other things like that. And my brain works totally differently. And the fact that we don't learn the same or excel at the same things was a huge hiccup whenever we would try to do a project together. Sometimes it is still a hiccup when we try to do a project together. If you've ever tried to work on something with someone and their brain works nothing like yours, you know what I mean. It's like, what? So today we're going to talk about that and how we've kind of worked through this and maybe some tips that will work for you. But before we get to that, what's been happening on the Lifestead? Well, I apologize. There was no podcast episode last week. I was playing nurse. My husband left on that great ice fishing trip, and he came home incredibly sick. Ended up catching, which I'm assuming is the flu, and he was quite ill. I haven't seen him that ill for a very long time. So I was playing nurse, and I was trying really hard not to get what my husband had. We were diffusing all the oils. We were taking all the stuff. I was trying my darndest, and as of right now, I still don't have it. So I hope it passed me by and it's gone from the house, and that we have lived through all of that and now it's done. So that's the reason there wasn't a podcast episode. I was playing nurse, and sometimes you just got to do that. What else has been happening? We finally got snow here, and then some serious cold. And Ma Nature is doing that thing where she's just bouncing back and forth. You know, we got up into the mid 30s, and then, you know, dropped down into these ridiculous with wind chills that were well below zero. And that's just the joy of living here in Minnesota, I guess. And that's what we do as people who are not 20 anymore. We talk about the weather. I swear I talk about the weather in every single episode, don't I? That's just what we do. I don't know. What else? I do have something super exciting to tell you. Some of y'all didn't even know that I was working on this. Most of you didn't know that I was working on this because I made it a point to not come out and say that I was working on this, but I finally finished my book about homesteading. Finally, you guys. And I didn't come right out and tell people I was working on it because I didn't want to jinx it, because I so many times have said, I'm working on a book and I'm doing this thing, and then it fizzles out and goes away. And I really didn't want that to happen with this project. I needed this project to just like get done and come out of me. So the first draft of my homesteading book is done. The working title of it is Peace, Love, and Bacon, like Tales from a Farmish Kind of Life or something like that. And the book is kind of about our journey to the farm and then being on the farm. It's about all those lessons we've learned and problems we've encountered and things we do differently and things we wouldn't change at all. And it's real and it's humorous and it's deep. And I cried when I finished it, because that's what you do. It's what you do when you finish a book. You cry. This is not a how-to book. This is not a how to raise animals or how to run your homestead kitchen. It's not a how-to book. And I have a feeling that now that I have finished this book, that those kind of how-to books might come later. But this book is more like sitting down with your pal for a cup of coffee while she kind of dishes about what it's really like to chase that homesteading dream and, you know, all that stuff. It's very real. And I'm really excited to get it all polished up and out to you. So that's what I need to do now. I got to clean it up. I got to make it shine. I got to talk to my cover designer and get a cover made. And then I will get it into your hands. And I do not want to tell you what my planned publish date is. I know what it is, but I ain't telling anybody that right now because I don't want to jinx anything. But I will say that I'm very hopeful that this book will be in your hands and your ears before I am starting seeds for my garden. So that's all I'm going to say about that. So there you go. That's my big announcement that I'm super excited about. I'm so glad that I got this done. I didn't write any books in 2024. Did you know that? I didn't know that. I went a whole year without writing a book. What? What is up with that? 2025 is going to be lit, you guys. What else can I tell you? The Farmish collection, the new setup for my snail mail newsletter, where it's 3 different quarterly publications of different topics. It is up and running. If you are subscribed to either the whole Farmish collection or the Farmish Papers part of it, the homesteading newsletter, you should have received your January copy by now. If you have not received your January copy, it either means that someone at the post office opened it and they're having a donut and reading this newsletter and having a great time, or it means that for some reason our communication got all messed up. Either I am still awaiting payment from you, or I'm still awaiting information from you, or you have emailed me and think I have your information and I don't. Somewhere in there's just been a little glitch. So if you have not received your copy, please contact me, Amy at afarmishkindoflife.com, or find me on social media and we will get you your first issue. Also, if you are one of the people who are listening and are like, oh my gosh, that's right, I need to switch everything over so I can get into this new system, please contact me and we will get that going. All right. I think that's all I have for an update. It's winter, so it's not super exciting here, you guys. I can't wait until spring. Let's head over to the main topic and talk about embracing how we all learn differently and excel at different things and how we can just make that all work in these lives we live together. Today's topic affects us all in some way, and I know that you've dealt with this in some way or another, whether it's on the homestead or you're trying to fix a problem at work or you're trying to figure something out in a relationship or just like everyday life, day-to-day life. And here's the thing. We all look at the world differently. We all learn about stuff differently. And we all excel at completely different things in completely different ways. And you would think that that is not as big of a deal as it is, but it really, really is. Okay? My husband and I are the perfect example of this. I have said a million times before that he has a super mechanical brain, okay? He's super mechanical, super like all into the spatial reasoning and all of that, while I am more about, I would say, the ins and outs of words and communication. And there have been many, many times in the 26-ish years that we've known each other that this specific truth or this specific difference has caused huge issues. And it's mostly because we didn't even understand that we were different. We didn't understand that was a thing, let alone like how to deal with it. So my husband's all about the mechanical things. I say he's a genius at mechanical things. He, of course, is like, no, I'm not. It's just normal. Everybody can do this. And I'm like, no, they can't. He can just look at a problem. He knows how to fix it. He can look at something he wants to build and he just knows how to do it. He can take a random pile of parts that are sitting on his garage floor and he can turn it into something useful. Like that's just how his brain works. Me, I'm looking at that pile of stuff going, what? Like I cannot even comprehend what he is seeing in his head. I can't see it. I don't understand it. I don't know how it works. That's his strength, not mine. But if you sit me down at a computer and give me 20 minutes, I will write you an article that sounds like I spent days on it, right? That's my strength. And my husband will look at me and be like, how did you do that? How did you write that so fast? How do you put all those words together like that? How do you know how to do that, right? We have different strengths. We excel at different things. Our brains work differently. I remember many, many years ago, he and I were sitting talking about, school, whatever, and things we'd done in school. And we got around to talking about some IQ type test that we had taken at some point in school. And he's like, oh yeah, I remember that test. And I started talking about the part in that test that totally tripped me up. Now I'm going to try and explain this. I probably won't do a very good job, but if you know what part I'm talking about, you're going to get it, right? Okay. So there's this part of the test, this particular test, where they showed you basically like they'd taken a box, like a 6-sided box, and they had kind of flattened it. So it was this flat thing. So it's like a one-dimensional thing now. And on each panel of the box, there were different shapes or patterns. Okay. And so the test part of it is that you had to figure out what the box would look like when it was put back together. Like, would the polka dot panel be next to the striped panel when it was all folded and put back together, or would it be next to the star panel? And apparently there are people who can look at this flat drawing and know, oh yeah, when that's put together into a 3-dimensional thing, this is where all the different patterns are going to be. Or this is where the red section is going to be in the blue section. It's not going to be next to the yellow section. Like, that was the hardest part of the test for me. And my husband is listening to me tell this story, and he's like, that part was cake. Like, how do you not look at that and know what it's going to be put together as? How do you look at that and not know that? And I'm like, how do people look at that and know what that is? It was crazy. I could not for the life of me figure that section out. So we keep talking about this test, right? I said, well, what test did you struggle with? Do you struggle with any of them? You genius, And he's like, here's the one I struggled with. Where it said, read this sentence and find the misspelled word? Or read this paragraph and choose a sentence that best summarizes what you read? He's like, that's the part I couldn't do. And of course, for me, that section was the easiest. I was like, how do you look at a sentence and not know what word is misspelled? How do you not? Isn't that crazy how different our brains are and how we excel at different things? And sometimes we don't even think about it. We just assume everybody can do what we do. The point is, we're all wired differently. These awesome brains that we have are all very, very different. And understanding the differences makes a huge impact. And it's not just necessarily how we learn and how we work, but it's also how we communicate and how we build relationships. I remember recently, last year, I guess it would have been, my husband and I were building this rabbit area because we were finally getting meat rabbits, and we were preparing, so we could bring the rabbits to our farm and get this all started. And he's got this whole area figured out in his head, how it's going to look. Not only how it's going to look, but how to make it happen, how things are going to fit together, right? The actual logistics of taking that thing from his brain to making it happen in front of him. That's what he can do. And I'm standing there with this glazed over look. And what's going on in my head is this. I'm seeing the space that we're standing in and that we're working in, and I see the materials that we have. So I've got that, like that's the beginning part, right? And then there's this big blank space in the equation. And then at the end, there's a finished product, which I can see because I know how I want it to look. That there's a huge part of the equation missing for me. And that's not because I don't know how to use tools. That's not because I don't know how to build stuff. I grew up in a construction family. I know how to build stuff. If you stand over me and give me step-by-step instructions, I will build you whatever you want. But aside from that, I am useless when it comes to knowing I want something built and then being able to see all the steps in my brain of how to make that mechanically and spatially actually happen. All of that is also my biggest hang up with trying to forge something. My husband will look at a piece of round stock and he can see in his head exactly what he needs to do. Like heat it up, hit that thing right there at that angle to turn it into what he wants to make. He sees it in his head. Me, I get that piece of hot stuff out of the forge and I hurry it over to the anvil. And it's hot and you want to work with it while it's still blazing hot, right? And I'm wasting all these precious seconds trying to figure out, okay, I'm holding in the tongs and now I need to position the piece on the anvil like this, I think. Okay, and then I'm going to hit it at this angle and then I got to turn it to make it become this thing that I can see in my head. And that middle mechanical and spatial part of the equation is just not there in my head. I cannot see it. It's a blank space. And meanwhile, he's watching me and he's saying, it's so simple. All you have to do is just hit it here. And then when I hit it in the wrong place and it doesn't do what I wanted it to do, I'm sure he's thinking, yeah, obviously. Why does this happen? Why are we so different? People learn and excel differently. Some are visual or hands-on learners. Others need to have verbal instructions. Some people need to have written instructions. And none of these ways are wrong. They're just different. It's just how we're made. Now, on the flip side, if someone needs to find information super fast in anything that's written down, that is my forte. It's like needle in a haystack in this huge thing and you need to find the information right there. That's where it is. How did you not see that? It's right there. If someone hands my husband and I, let's say, they hand us a 3-paragraph something that needs to be spiffed up, I will have that read and edited and rewritten before my husband has made it through reading the first paragraph. Because that's how my brain works. There have been some times we've walked into a hardware store, we're working on a project and then we got to run and go get something. And we walk into the hardware store and we got to look for a certain bolt or a nut or a screw or a latch or a hinge. And it's got to be this specific thing, right? And we'll be standing there, the wall where they've got like a million drawers of all the bolts or all the, whatever, right? And my husband will tell me the number or the measurement or the whatever, the specific of the thing that we are looking for, right? And we look at this wall of items and I will find that item, that specific item 10 years before him because of how my brain processes letters and numbers. It's so easy for me. Oh, you want that? Okay, it should be over here. Okay, boom, there it is. How come you couldn't find that? It's right there. That is not how his brain works. So why does this matter? First of all, understanding that we have different brains is really important for avoiding frustration. Because if you have ever tried to explain something to someone who is clearly not getting it, right? You know how easy it is to feel annoyed. You're almost like, are you trying to make this difficult? Like, how do you not, like, oh my gosh, seriously. But often they're not trying to be difficult. They're not ignoring you. They're not like trying to annoy you on purpose. It's just that you're not explaining it in a way they can understand. Like when my husband is trying to explain to me how he's going to fix something, I have to say, okay, but can you show me how this works? Can you, I need you to explain this to me differently. And I've done it enough years now that he knows I'm not doubting him. I'm not saying the way you're trying to fix it isn't going to work. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not saying that at all. I'm just trying to follow along in a way that my brain works. And the second reason it's really important to understand these differences is that it helps build respect almost. When you realize that someone else's abilities or skills or ways of looking at things are just as valuable as yours, even if they're completely different, it will change the way you interact with them because you stop expecting them to do things your way and you start appreciating or at least understanding the different strengths that they bring to the table. So there's a lot of reasons why understanding that our brains are different actually really matters. So what are some tips for navigating the differences that you have in learning and problem solving and all these different situations we end up in life where we're like, how in the world do you not see that? Or how in the world do you not understand this? How are we going to navigate those? Number 1, ask questions. If you are not understanding someone, ask them to explain it to you in a different way. Do not be afraid to say, I don't quite follow this. Can you show me? Or can you give me a different example? I don't remember what the situation was, but I was super frustrated about the way something was going down. Like, I have no idea what it was. I just remember what my husband said. I was really frustrated and my husband stopped and he said, let me ask you a question. Do you know how whatever this thing was that I was getting frustrated about, do you know how this thing works? And the truth was, I didn't. And when he explained to me the purpose and the function and how it all went together, I realized I was getting frustrated simply because I thought I knew how the thing worked, and I totally didn't. And it just took him going, hold up, wait a second. Can I ask you a question first? Do you know how this thing works, first of all? Like, do you know the purpose of this thing? Do you know why this was, whatever the situation was? I just remember he was like, hold on, girl, let's reel back a little bit. Let's start it at square one. Like, do you understand how this works? Because, let me give you a clue here. If you don't understand how it works, you sure as heck aren't going to know how to fix it. So that was very helpful. Similarly, asking something like, can you explain how you're seeing this? Or can you help me understand, like whatever. That can be really helpful in the moments where maybe you have a family member that you're talking to and they're really frustrated with XYZ. Okay. And you have no idea why they even care. I'm not talking about projects now. I'm talking about like life stuff, right? They are really upset about something some other family member said or did or tried or forgot or whatever. And they are so frustrated and you have no idea why they even care. You're like, wow, why is this such a big deal? It's because you have no idea what their perspective is. The vast majority of the things we go at in life, whether it's a project or a disagreement or an unknown situation, they're things we go at with a brain that is not the same as someone else's brain. I mean, this even explains things like when I would talk about bringing a new animal to the farm, or I would talk about, you know what, I think we should multiply our flock by 30 bazillion. The whole time we're talking about it, I'm thinking, what's a few more animals? It's not that much work. I mean, if you got 20, what's 200, right? It's not that much work. And my husband the whole time is thinking, good Lord, Amy, every animal you bring here increases the feed bill. Two different brains, two different priorities. And it doesn't mean that one of us is wrong and one of us is right. It just means we have two very different ways of looking at something, two very different ways of taking in information, two different sets of strengths and weaknesses, and we don't even realize it because we always assume that people see the world like us and think the same as us and come to the same conclusions as us in things we don't even realize there could be a difference about. When I'm looking at a paragraph and someone is like, where's the misspelled word? Right there. How do you not see that? I don't even realize there could be a difference about it, right? My husband is looking at this piece that I want to make in the forge and he's like, how can you not look at that piece and not understand what you need to do to make it do what you want it to do? How, like we don't even realize there's a difference. Here's another tip that I have found. What is the part that you're missing? When my husband is trying to explain something to me, he will walk through all the steps now. He will walk through it stupidly slow. And I will figure out the part that doesn't make sense. I will figure out the piece that is missing, that is making it so something doesn't make sense. It's one of my phrases now. Oh, that's the part I was missing. That's the part I was missing. And now my husband knows that in order for me to understand the thing he's building or the way he's going to solve an issue, he has to figure out what part it is that I'm missing that's causing me to not understand. And of course, because I'm visual, I literally see that piece I'm missing as a blank spot in some kind of like half filled in step-by-step process in my head because I'm visual. So it's a literal blank spot in what I'm trying to figure out. So what's the part you're missing? What is the thing that's making it so you don't understand what someone else is trying to explain? Another tip, use props. If you're explaining something, this is very important for visual people. If you're explaining something, try using physical props. For instance, my husband, he's trying to explain something and he will grab whatever is nearby to represent what he's trying to explain. He has grabbed mason jars or tools or random household items to kind of mimic how a contraption is going to work. And I'm not kidding you. It's like magic for my visual brain. We have this giant whiteboard in our dining room. And I mean giant, like 4 foot by 6 foot. It's crazy big, right? And I can't tell you the millions of times that it has been used to draw diagrams to help Amy understand what her husband is talking about. In fact, our oldest son came home from work the other day and he wanders through the dining room and he looks at the board, the whiteboard, and he looks at what's on there and he thinks for a minute and he says, why was Dad trying to explain to you what a head gasket is? And I thought that was hilarious because how did you look at that scribbling on the board that has no labels or anything? And how did you know that he was telling me about a head gasket, which is exactly what he was trying to explain? Probably because their brains are kind of similar, right? Something that's kind of similar to that with forging. I've already said that, I have a problem seeing what I'm trying to make and figuring out what I have to do to make it do the thing that I want it to do. So someone had actually suggested using like a hard clay to sort of pre-do a project. So you can basically practice how to make the thing and see, okay, I'm gonna work with this piece here, and if I hit it here on the angle, it's gonna move the piece this way. So then I will have to twist it here while hitting it here. And you can do it with clay instead of a hot piece of metal, right? Which is much better for so many reasons. And it worked really, really well for me when I was trying to figure out how to make all these split crosses that I made for Christmas. Once I had made it with clay, it was so much easier for me to figure out in my brain what I was doing. So if that tip happens to work for anybody who's trying to take on forging, there you go. All right, another tip. Communicate your needs. Figure out how you learn. I would assume most adults kind of have a clue about how they learn and what ways of learning don't really work for them. But figure out how you learn. Don't make the other person guess. That's mean. That's manipulative. Figure out how you learn so you can help other people help you learn. And also realize that most people don't ever work on this stuff. And so most people are not sitting in their frustration of not understanding something and then having this moment of clarity and thinking, gee, I bet he's just trying to explain the best way he knows how, and we're just not connecting because our brains work differently. No, that's not what we do. Most of us just blow up at each other and then nothing gets accomplished. And that's true of trying to build something together. It's also true of something completely different. Like I said before, wondering why someone in your extended family is so upset or worried about something when you're wondering what the big deal is. We're all trying to communicate with each other and our brains work totally different. We all learn different. We take in information differently. We see situations differently. And the vast majority of us don't even realize that, except to assume that the other person is obviously seeing it or doing it wrong. That's usually as far as we go with it. Another tip, appreciate people's strengths. Instead of focusing on what someone can't do, maybe highlight what they're good at. I mean, I might not be able to fix a tractor, but if I watch you do it and you explain it to me, I can probably write a really great article about how to do it afterwards, because that's how my brain works. If we all had the same strengths, the world would fall apart. If we all had the same weaknesses, the world would fall apart. If we all had the same brains, the world would fall apart. We need all these different brains and intelligences and all of that to make the world function. We just have to learn how to work with each other to make that actually useful. Here's another tip. Accept that your brains won't work the same. Your brain is not going to work the same as somebody else's. Are there ways you can possibly get better at something by practicing? Yeah. Using the clay to kind of pre-do the projects that I'm doing in the forge before I, try to attempt them with hot metal. That's a good tip to use. It's good practice. But I'm never going to be the person who looks at a piece of metal and goes, okay, this is exactly how I would turn that into this. I'm never going to be that person. I'm never going to have the mechanical smarts that my husband does. And you know what? He's never going to be able to write a super well-organized article or a really deep, insightful piece in 10 minutes like I can. We're just different people. He's always going to have to grab the salt and pepper shaker and a dry erase marker and a coffee cup to explain something to me. And we've made peace with that. That's what it is. But we had to work through that to understand each other's brains a little bit. I'm reminded of a quote which goes so well with this episode. You've probably heard it before. It's often attributed to Albert Einstein, but who knows if he actually said it. But it really fits well with today's topic. And that quote is, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. I love that quote, and I think it fits really, really well with this episode. So we are all wired differently. And when you start embracing these differences, there's something kind of amazing that happens. Life actually gets easier because you stop wasting your energy trying to fit people into your mold. You stop wasting your energy getting mad that people don't understand you. And instead, you start working together more effectively. That's true whether you're fixing a fence or planting a garden or trying to have a really tough conversation with someone or just understanding how someone else's brain works makes everything smoother. Understanding how people learn will make the whole process go smoother. At least it will give you a different perspective on what might be going through their brain, and learning to appreciate each other's strengths while understanding each other's weaknesses, or, blank spots, like I like to call them. It means that you know each other enough to give each other the tools to succeed. And that can only make things better, my friends. All right. Thank you so much for hanging out with me here today at the Farmish Kind of Life podcast. I hope this episode gives you a new perspective on the people in your life. They're not trying to drive you crazy. Our brains are just different. I firmly believe that. And hopefully this will maybe even give you a little bit more patience when things don't quite click. If you are still waiting for information or anything having to do with the Farmish collection, please drop me a line at amy@afarmishkindoflife.com or find me on social media, and we will figure out where the glitch is and get you going on that. Have a great week, you guys, and I will talk to you again soon. Hope you enjoyed the show today. To continue the conversation, visit our website at afarmishkindoflife.com, find A Farmish Kind of Life on social media, or drop me an email at amy@afarmishkindoflife.com. Peace, love, and bacon, y'all. Stay Farmish.